Welcome to another episode of Data Gurus. I'm so excited to have Michael Winnick, who is the CEO and founder of dscout, join me today on a Friday afternoon. Welcome, Michael.
How's it going? How you doing, Sima? How are
Good.
things?
Yeah, good. How about you?
Doing all right. Just, wrapping things up here. Obviously excited to head into the weekend and just, yeah, I'm but really excited to get a chance to spend some time talking to you.
Same. I'm excited. Michael, for people who don't know you, I always like to have guests kind of talk a little bit about their background as to, how you got to the place before you founded your company. If you could just share a little bit of that, I think it'd be wonderful. And people always say, "Well, how much detail do you want me to go into?" I'd just say whatever's significant that you want to highlight.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've spent my whole career around the worlds of product and design and technology. So I started as, I guess, what would now be called a product manager. And my first job was at Wired, right when the internet was
Yep.
born. So a
Cool.
long time ago in another century, which feels slightly terrible to say, but I still vaguely remember those days and
That is true,
started there.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was kind of very entrepreneurial and,
Hmm.
I guess at the time, Wired was very much a startup environment.
Hmm.
Um, and then I spent a couple years at other kind of valley-based late '90s and early 2000s startups in various product roles, and then actually went to design school after that. I moved
Oh,
to
that's
the
interesting.
Midwest. I'm based in
Yeah.
Chicago. I went to design school. And then, left that and joined, really a very early, stage innovation consulting firm. So we were doing design, product strategy work for really the biggest companies in the world and started using a lot of different research techniques to inform what we were working on and kind of finding signal and, kind of really got a lot of experience there, traveled the world, worked with, all kinds of giant companies on lots of fun things.
How fun is that?
But yeah,
Yeah,
it was a great experience,
yes.
and, you know, um, kinda towards the end of that, I really started to get back to wanting to kind of blend the 2 parts of my career, so kind of the entrepreneurial valley software building with kind of innovation consulting, and that really brought me to, starting dscout. So that's the journey in a nutshell.
That's so cool. I just wanted to ask you, what inspired you to go to design school?
Sure, I think it's all part to me, design and research
Mhm,
are hand in hand.
mhm.
If you wanna make great experiences for people, you have to understand a lot about them, what makes
Yeah,
them tick and move, and so, when I was in product, kinda management roles, I really always felt like the things that I was drawn to and the things that I was always trying to figure out were just some fundamental questions. What do people really want? How do we give it to them in a really compelling way? And I felt like the world of design had maybe more to tell us about that than the
right.
world of classic kind of MBA, business school, and market research. So, the design school I went to would now be called. It's called the Institute of Design. It's still around. It's
Mhm.
based in Chicago, and it's kind of a protogenitor in a lot of ways to something like the D school, right?
Cool.
So as many of the classes seemed research oriented or kind of methods oriented or
Right.
systems level thinking as they were just like, design, form, function,
Yep.
So that's kind of what drew me to.
Very cool. Okay. And
Yeah.
so now let's talk about dscout. So what
Yeah.
was just high level, what was the pain point you were trying to solve? Like, I'd love to try to imagine like a founder thinking about an idea and like if there's an aha moment, like this is what I'm gonna go do.
Yeah, it's funny because I think according to a lot of classic founder thinking and the ways you'd approach building a business, I wouldn't say that was the exact way that I approached building
Yeah.
dscout. So kind of looking back at it, I'm like, wow, I could have really been more rigorous here or done this a little bit
Yes.
differently,
Yeah.
as is the way. But I'd say that you know, really the concept of from dscout really struck kind of came out of work I was doing as an innovation consultant, and
Mhm.
we were sending anthropologists all over the world to observe how people were using products and services and their environments, and it was a really, I think, very powerful means of um identifying opportunities and creating kind of empathy inside of the
Right.
organizations we were working for, but it was just inherently unscalable. It was
Mhm.
you could really only put it on very large, very expensive projects that were done for, the largest brands kind of
Right.
episodically. And a lot of the work we were doing was based on obviously technology products and phones. And I really just felt like, wow, we could get this level of signal from people, from anyone in the world, if we could just
Yeah.
figure out how to tap into them on their phones in their homes, right?
Right.
And so that was really the impetus for starting dscout, was to kind of take this kind of, I'd say, very bespoke style of research and be able to kind of democratize it via new technology. So I was like, well, this makes sense. I need that. That's going to really be
I
helpful
would
for
use
my work.
that.
And then
Yeah.
and then I started the business, and for a couple of years, I was like, okay, well, maybe not a lot of other people don't need this, right? So we kind of had to pivot a little bit and shift, and in some ways, kind of wait for the market to develop
Mhm.
around the idea. And so
Mhm.
I think sometimes as a entrepreneur, you work pre-market, and sometimes you work once there is a defined market. I'm sure there's pros or cons either way, but
Sure.
we were very pioneering and very early in our market, and then our market really started to develop really around the rise of large, agile teams in I'd say technology-oriented roles, right? So really around the world of user experience. And so once that market started to form, the things we were doing fit really well with that market, and we
Mhm.
started to really kind of grow our business from there.
Do you think that the tech companies really, brought user experience to the forefront in terms of validating its application, its use, and understanding kind of how it fits into the innovation cycle?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So first,
Yeah.
yes, I do
Yes.
agree with that. I think just in general, the change I've seen over my career when I started in design school and started in the world of using design as part of experiences is that, it's really moved from moved into the common understanding of, if you're going to make great product and services experiences, you're going to be
Yes.
heavily investing in the design capability, right? So that used to be debated,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And
for
now
sure.
I don't really think it's debated so much. And so I
It's
think that,
accepted.
right, and I think technology companies and have special, obviously a logically heavy focus on user experience, and
Mhm.
they also are often constantly building product, right?
Yeah.
So software is forever. Once you start making software, you gotta
Yeah.
make more, and making the
Yeah.
next one, and so
Yeah.
you have a lot of questions. What should we make, and is it going to work, and how does it
Mhm.
look? And so all of that just leads to a real intense focus on user experience. And my view of research is, it's kind of like design's nerdy cousin. Wherever design goes, research is going to
Oh,
follow and
cool.
be like,
Yeah.
have you thought about that thing? And
I
do we
like
really
that.
understand the problem we're trying to
Yeah.
solve? And, is that going to really work? Right. It's
Yeah.
kind of like and so I think that that is where we saw the large growth in user
Yeah.
experience, both design and research. And now I'd say, any company that wants to compete in any form of digital product design or
Experience. Yeah.
products
Yeah.
is going to need to bring these skills into their world. And that's kind of like every company now, right?
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
it's it's pretty rare that we come across a company that is doesn't have any need to sell their products
Right.
online to, right. So that's kind of the world, right? To
Yeah.
build systems that their customers can interact directly with them, that can build systems for their internal teams, right? So it really at this point is, really every company is a technology company. While at dscout, we work with plenty of, household name tech firms. We work with plenty of companies that are not quote
Sure.
unquote tech
Yeah.
firms at all. So
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID probably accelerated the digital experience in terms
sure.
of trying to figure out, how do I interact with my customer, whether it's a customer journey or selling my products,
Hmm.
or just overall experience. That's my thesis. I think everybody, like, I'm sure your business benefited from, a world pandemic where everybody had to go digital.
Sure. Yeah, it was certainly, hard to know that in the early days, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
as in retrospect, it had a huge effect beneficial effect on companies like ours.
Sure.
Companies were forced to move away from more traditional in-person, in-depth qualitative methodologies. And to your point, fields like ours thrive when there are discontinuous changes in the market, right?
Yes.
And COVID, I mean, phones was a change, internet, and COVID
Yes.
too is another one where these had to rethink their supply chains, how they got
Mhm.
value to customers, what experiences would look like. And so, I was like, when the world has a lot of questions,
Yeah.
research tools and organizations thrive. And when
Yeah.
the world feels like it's in a heavily sustaining innovation moment where everything's kind of known, yeah, does it engender as many
Yeah.
questions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's weird though. I don't imagine a world like that anymore. I think it's always we're gonna always have questions at this point,
Yeah, it's interesting
right?
even, yeah, if you kind of look at today and this time,
Yeah.
in some ways, we're kind of in. And I think, if I go back even a couple years post-COVID and in between, it kind of felt like a lot of user experience starting to stabilize.
Mhm.
You saw very few, and you still see very few, large new entrants, so with
Yeah.
consumer products, for instance. And in some ways, that was because, our understandings about user experience had kind of codified around the technologies that were available to us, right? And
Right.
so, and now obviously AI and Gen AI has entered our market, and so that's another one of those very big discontinuous
Mhm.
changes where it forces us to rethink kind of everything, right? So it
Sure.
doesn't just
Yeah.
force us, to rethink um, how we're going to do research and how you might do design or how you might run a business, but it starts, even more fundamentally, what are user experiences going to look like and how are they
Mhm.
going to work?
Mhm.
And what is the software paradigm that we'll be operating in? Obviously, societally, let's take it the next, there's
Yes,
many
sure.
levels out, right? So there's a
Yeah.
lot of big questions. So I think it is actually a super important time for organizations to be investing in research and understanding,
Mhm.
especially strategic research and early stage research, because we're really in a time of kind of profound, you know, universe changing
Change. Right. For sure.
opportunity.
So tell me, how does dscout work? How does a client interact with is it a
Sure.
platform? Is it a subscription? Just give us a
Yep.
sense of how it all works.
Absolutely. Yeah. So dscout is an experience research platform. And
Okay.
so what that means is companies subscribe to our products, services, as well as participant pool, or you would call
Yep.
that a panel.
Right.
So we call it a participant pool. So when companies subscribe to dscout, they get access to all of those things. And so it enables them to find participants to do research with.
Mhm.
Sometimes they want to manage or bring their own panelists, and we certainly have tools to enable that as well. And then there are different, effectively, ways that you can conduct research with those participants. Some are just like a Zoom call or a one on
Yep.
one with some special research bells and whistles. We have tools where you can spend time, do really quick research and get it back from hundreds of participants.
Mhm.
So whether that can look like traditional surveys, we also include a lot of video and heavy media in our
Okay.
in our work. You can run usability tests and concept feedback, and you can also run, we call, diary missions or longitudinal missions, which is just a fancy
Nice.
word for saying, hey, you can spend a week with somebody or a
Right.
month when you need to, and
Yes.
get really into kind of how
The
they
lives.
operate their lives. So you have
Yep.
access to participants, methodologies, and then tools to make sense of, analyze that
Mm.
work, and then codify it and share it out with your team. So when you're subscribing to dscout, you're really getting from recruiting all the way through delivering exciting sizzle reel to your team of the things that you
Nice.
found.
Very
So
nice. So
yeah,
and who do you serve mostly? Are you selling to market research groups within brands? Are you selling into product, or what? Like, give us an idea of who
sure.
fully uses your services.
Yeah, so I think that it's something that we were talking about a little earlier, and I
Yeah.
think just to bring it together, right?
Yeah.
So our real strength, it depends a little bit on the market, but for the most part, you're going to see that organizations have user experience teams that are typically reporting up through product, although it can be
Yep.
different a little bit based on the industry that you're in. And those are the teams that we typically sell into. So it might be a design or product management organization with a research function. We also do work with market research teams
Okay.
or insights teams, depending on that. That often might occur in retail or a
Mm,
CPG firm, although they will have user experience teams as well. And sometimes we also work with innovation firms who are kind of charged with, or sorry, innovation teams who are charged with, kind of
ideas and
effectively coming up with
concepts.
new
Yeah.
concepts for businesses or products in the organization.
Got it, got it. So I know, there's always a debate as to what is included in research versus what's not included, quote unquote, in research. And, when you think about UX and experience, your
Mhm.
perspective on is it market research? Is it not market research? Like, what's your thesis here on in terms of where you fit?
Yeah, I don't think about it too much. I do think that there are important, different schools and capabilities
Sure.
in research, right? And I
Yeah.
think that, but I would say while there are differences, we all share a lot in common, right? In
Yes.
terms of
Yeah.
our orientations and interests. And so, I would say that market researchers, some market researchers would probably find dscout really valuable, right?
Yeah.
And for the sorts of problems they're trying to solve. And, so to me, it's there's some differences, but like I said, there's a root in commonality in terms of, the quality of your panelists, the quality
Mhm.
of the information that you're receiving, your assessment of how well the tool can solve the problems and challenges that you're trying to solve in your role. So,
Yeah, and getting
yeah,
answers to real business questions,
right.
right? And being agnostic to methodology. Like that's how I think about research. It's all of it. I think last time we spoke, I asked you the question, you're like, "Yes." It's everything, right? It could
Right.
be whatever you kind of define it, but not having any hard and fast rules as to is it research, not research. It just answers questions for critical business decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it.
Mhm.
And, I do wish the world often thought about it
I
that way,
know.
which
I
is
know.
right. So
Yeah.
I think that organizations can get very wedded to specific methodologies, which I think can be, yeah, which isn't really the goal, right? The
Right.
goal isn't the methodology. The goal is the decisions you're helping people make
Correct.
and the outputs that you're helping people
Yeah.
drive.
I totally agree. Okay, so Michael, you've been an entrepreneur for I think 15 years. Is that right? When you founded dscout?
I founded dscout a little over 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
So yeah.
All right. But you had
And
another
before that, I
business.
was an entrepreneur. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
I've
yeah.
yeah, I've been in the entrepreneurial world
Yeah.
for a while. Mhm.
Um, I would love to ask you, if you had to share kind of key learnings that you could, if you in looking back on your career as an entrepreneur, what are some of the things that you would say, "Wow, I really learned this along the way." I don't wanna say, like, "What would you have done differently?" You could say answer it that way, but what are some of the key lessons or takeaways that you have for other entrepreneurs or who are embarking on their journey?
Sure. Yeah, I think that it's obviously been a unbelievable experience
Yeah.
going through all of the different phases of a company or an organization, right? I
Mhm.
remember, obviously, I vaguely remember the days of dscout being, two people sitting in a
Yeah.
corner and
Yep.
working on the business together, and now we have 180 employees and right,
Amazing.
we're
Yeah.
global offices and all of the things going on. And I think part of the trick or one of the main things I think I've learned over this period of time is that the job of an entrepreneur and the role changes dramatically almost every 2 or 3 years. You almost have to
Every phase.
retool and rethink
Yeah.
what you're doing and how
Mhm.
you work and what your job and role is. And I think you can be holding on to the way you operate in the last phase when you're kind of, you need to move to the next phase, right?
Yeah.
So, in the early days, as a simple example, right, you are a large part of the team,
Yeah.
right? You're half of,
Yes.
you're playing a lot of different roles, and you're intimately involved with almost every decision that should be made, right? And
Mhm.
over time, that changes and shifts. And where we are today, which is, a company where we have a lot of different functions and motions. My job is way less to be in the weeds
Mm.
solving every single problem, although sometimes I still do that,
You
right?
dive right
But
in.
but it's way more about, mm, yep, building the right team, creating the
Mhm.
right measures for accountability for those teams, building the systems that help to propel the company forward, right? And
Right.
so there's huge stages of change along those. And so I think that, that to me is a big part of the, something I've certainly learned very well along the way and sometimes struggled with, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's hard. It's
like
hard
the
to shift.
skills and there's a lot of unlearning you have to do kind of at
Yeah.
those different phases. I think the other comment I would just say is I think that perpetual, I think being an entrepreneur is in many situations a perpetual balancing act between
Mhm.
ambition and patience and finding the right
Yeah.
tenor between those things. Sometimes when I made my biggest mistakes early at dscout, it's that I wasn't patient enough
Mm.
to let the market come to us, if that
Yes.
makes sense, right?
Yes, of
So
course.
I would
Yeah.
take a half pivot or move this way, but it was just a distraction and slowed us down, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that while you are ambitious and want to, drive growth, I think sometimes you have to also, like I said, balance that with a patience or a belief that the market will kind of come your way, right? So I think that that's probably a big thing, which I certainly learned in the early days,
Mhm.
and have thought a lot about as we, kind of have grown the company over time. And when I've kind of
Sure.
noticed in general with our growth, I was looking at this because I was looking over a long arc of growth for some strategic work we're doing, and it's kind
Mhm.
of like um, we have pretty much been able to introduce a significant new capability to our organization and to our product every kind of 2 or 3 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there's a natural cycle of building, getting that built, and then getting it integrated, used, tuned, right? And so that helps me think about kind of what's the speed of innovation
Yeah.
that we can achieve. And like I said, how to be a little patient in those changes, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no, I think people always say this in business, there's no such thing as overnight success. I would say the same thing is true with products. There's almost no product that ever built that day one, like 7 billion people used.
I know.
It
I
takes a while.
know.
You get it started, you got to build it up. It just takes a lot of,
And
like I
that
said, a
last
lot of
mile was
patience.
really, really hard. The last mile, getting it to market, getting customer adoption, training, getting the salespeople, like understanding
Yeah.
what the value prop. I mean, that's hard. That's hard
Yeah.
work. It in
Yeah.
some
Yeah. I
ways,
think it's a,
building it is kind of the fun part. Sorry, I'm a little biased here, but then taking it to
oh,
market and
absolutely.
scaling it is that's when you got to win
Yeah.
hearts and minds across.
Yeah, I think I always say launching is the starting line.
Yeah,
It feels like the finish line, but it's
it's
just the starting
not.
line, right?
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
not a date, it's a long period of
Correct.
time, and it takes an enormous amount of, um, yeah, commitment,
Yeah.
effort, and patience
I'm
to,
patient. Yeah.
basically get to make sure that you're doing that successfully.
And I know, Michael, you probably you were early in the space in terms
Mhm.
of leveraging, smartphones and being able to collect data that way, and, I always find and from a personal experience, I always found, like I used to think competition, like, "Oh, darn, the competition's coming," and then I realized over time, they're validating the market. Like, it's great to have competition, um, right? Like, there's more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it also helps in terms of company culture to say there's a unifying competitor
Sure.
or right? How did you deal with that? Because you were early and then you had competitors come into space.
Yeah, our category has changed a lot in terms of the competitive dynamics,
Yeah.
certainly over the period of time that I've been involved in, right? And so I think that in the early days, to your point, there was some competition, but it was kind of competition for kind of ideas in a
Yeah.
lot of ways,
Right.
and we didn't even have defined buyer personas
Right.
or motions to sell to defined buyer personas, right? And so as the market's formed, it's definitely become more competitive. And I think that to your point, I think that it's both a validation of the market, and it's really healthy for an organization.
Yeah. Yes.
I think certainly where we are today, we have strong direct competitors.
Mhm.
Customers do have alternatives, in our category. We think we stack up really well against them.
Mhm.
But we got to be on our toes. We gotta sell really well. We've
Yep.
gotta. And it is, I think, really, um, does create a lot of positive momentum in the culture
Mhm.
when you win. And there's some
Yes.
other things that I didn't realize were really good benefits of that, like when you're competing, and certainly when you're competing against incumbents, like budgets are there,
Yeah.
buyers are used to buying, right?
So
And
true.
so it's things that can really slow you down in the early days, right? Where
Mhm.
you don't have a defined buyer, you don't have a defined budget, right? Getting right now you have those things, and now
Yeah.
it's a question of just uh, or do we have the right solution, or are we selling it in
Yes.
a way that really puts our best forward?
Yeah. That it's definitely a mind shift, and, I've definitely learned, like, it's a good thing. It's a good thing internally, and it's a good thing externally. To your
Totally
point,
agree.
budget's
Yeah.
already there, right? And so it's just a matter of share shifting the budgets to yourself and to your company. Um I guess the only other question I wanted to ask you as it relates to being a founder and entrepreneur, if you had to think about, when you started, did you have a defined goal of where do you want it to end up? Or has it shifted along the way?
I didn't so this is back to when I was saying I'm not sure I followed the best,
Right.
founder, rules and recommendations along the way. I don't think I really did have a clear goal early.
Okay.
And so I think that I felt like this was a valuable thing and a thing I was passionate about and willing to put my time into.
Sure.
But in some ways, I don't think I really thought super hard around the exit path
Right.
or kind of what scale it could become. And in some ways, that's healthy. But in other ways, maybe, had I thought through it a little bit more, I think I could have. There are certain decisions I probably could have made that were more successful. But
Yeah.
I think that I didn't have a super clear picture early. Um, but I knew there was something special here, and
Mhm.
I knew that we could get to it. I just think I just didn't really understand what the shape of the company or organization would look like. So,
Well, you've done a
yeah,
fantastic job. I
thank you.
mean, your
Yeah.
company is I hear about it all the time through other people, so congratulations on your journey thus far, and
Yeah, no, appreciate that. So,
yeah.
like I said, it's been super rewarding, and it's fun because it feels like while it's been I've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
It feels still like it's been 5 different roles and five
Yeah.
different jobs,
Yeah.
right? Every couple of years it changes in a lot of ways and presents really exciting new opportunities and new challenges. And we just got done, which is always gratifying for me. We've been doing a kind of a intimate conference with some of our customers every
Nice.
year. We just got done with that last week. And it was just,
Awesome.
it's one of those moments where you look around and you're like, wow, we
Yes, you're making a
really do
difference.
some amazing things
Yeah.
and work with some amazing people and have a really great impact on them being able to
Yes.
succeed in their jobs, which is kind of really what it's all about.
That's
So
really rewarding too.
yeah.
And also when your employees progress and grow and, do really cool things
Yeah.
and evolve as well. I
Yeah, it's
love those
amazing. I
stories as
think
well.
that, yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I think that anything worth doing takes a team, and so
Yes.
it's really gratifying when you really see that come together and happen. So,
Totally agree. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to keeping in touch with you. And
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I love your story.
Thanks, really appreciate it. Great to spend some time with you, and yeah, real look forward to keeping you posted on what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you.